We think it's time the wizard community tried reaching out to Muggles. Now Muggle society is more liberal and more educated. We think it's time wizards come out of the closet. The advent of the international engagement between different countries, we think Muggle society has progressed significantly from the Dark Ages, in which wizard-Muggle relations were characterised by fear and mistrust. If anything, at this point, Muggle society is less racist and bigoted and mistrusting than wizard society. It's a society in which the statue in the entrance to their government depicts wizards on top of goblins and house elves. This is a society with a rigid class stratification, and a society which is, yeah, we agree. We think wizards owe a duty to associate their society with that of Muggles and deliver the benefits of knowing, using, and cooperating with magic. It'd be fucking awesome. And we propose, as the actor, as being the wizarding world, being the actor in this debate, we firstly reveal ourselves by way of topic 2, which these guys vetoed. We will end world hunger. We will end poverty. And Vincent, the heartless bastard he is, wants to opt a motion where we support curing disabled people. We shall then immediately inform media institutions that magic exists. We will inform them about basic facts about the wizarding world. The Minister of Magic will go on like Muggle television and cast some spells and shit, and tell them basic facts about Hogwarts, about Diagon Alley. Thirdly, this debate is not about outing individual wizards. We will allow people to opt into whether or not they want to be known specifically to be Muggles. Like if you're Lily Potter, you don't have to be known to everyone as being Muggles. We will not say specific wizards like live here, here, and here. Fourthly, we're just going to inform the Wizarding Society exists and basic facts about that. And fourthly, we're having to facilitate tourism to Diagon Alley, to engagement and integration between both those societies. 3 reasons we should do this. Firstly, benefits to Muggles. Secondly, benefits to wizards. Thirdly, inter-society relations. Firstly, benefits to Muggles. It's generic analysis, but we say that it's sheer luck that you're born without the amazing inherent benefits of being a magician and having magic. And having all the benefits which you're uniquely placed to deliver. When you have a wand, when you can just, say Accio and find your little parties, when you can say, when you can just fly around, when you can, summon things, when you have all the utility that you can get from, overcoming the physical limitations of being, a stumpy, rubbish animal with 4 limbs. First thing we say, we eliminate want by sharing our powers and expertise. Something which is really, really hard to do in secret, ladies and gentlemen. Because we're better placed to do that when we're working alongside Muggles, when we can explain to them how to operate wizarding technology, when we can give them charms, when we can give them the Sword of Gryffindor, when we can give them protection amulets, and explain how those magical technologies operate, when we can work alongside democratic Muggle institutions and administering welfare by waving our wands and loaves of bread falling out of the sky. The second thing we'd say is that it's really valuable to Muggles being able to defend themselves from wizards. We say there are wizards out there who want to hurt Muggles. There are rogue elements of wizarding society, people like Voldemort and his Death Eaters and other adherents, and we think it's incredibly valuable to Muggles that they know that there's a threat, and just for their peace, just so that they're aware, and but also that they can take steps to defend themselves. That we can give them amulets so they can buy charms, so they can subcontract out defense from auras and stuff, so you can buy a security guard who's a wizard or whatever. And we think it's easier that when you know the threat's coming to be able to defend yourself from the more negative elements of wizarding society, rather than just relying on wizarding, policing, which is ultimately always after the fact. The third thing we'd say, that it provides Muggle society of knowledge of instances where your families disappeared due to the Death Eaters, that you know, or even potentially not knowing that a family member once existed and was killed, and there's a memory charm which has been cast on you by auras to alleviate you of the pain, that you have knowledge of what's happened in your society due to wizards, not only the potentially harmful things that you have the peace that your life is enriched by knowing specifically the details that happen, but also the good things that happen in human society, that you understand the nature of causation. But the fourth benefit that we point to for Muggles in this debate is ghost science, something which one of my in the 3rd round, that enables Muggles the understanding of the universe and the wonder and amazement of seeing the phenomena of the wizarding world, seeing ghosts, seeing magic, being able to analyse that, and being able to partake and to use, not only use, but to analyse and understand the way the world works is an incredibly important benefit. It's the way that humans instinctively tend towards trying to understand the way the world works, and reach their existence and understanding that way. The other thing we'd say is that the effect of our model will lead to a less paternalistic wizarding society. Hermione casts a memory charm on her parents so that they don't even know they exist, and that's okay. That is not okay, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think it's okay for the Wizarding World to patronise the Muggle world the way that it has. And when it's out in the open and everyone knows about it, it's less hard to baby Muggles and to prevent them from knowing information which they can easily access.
Julian.
The other thing we'd say is engagement with the Wizarding World happens anyway, but it happens under their side in an undemocratic way. Because the Prime Minister of Britain knows about the existence of wizards and talks to the Ministry of Magic about the imminent threat of Voldemort. We think it's undemocratic and illegitimate that information is not, that deliberation and just like passing policies and taking measures to defend from that is not part of the democratic process where Muggles understand those things which need to be cooperated on, but it only happens at the top. Secondly, benefits to wizards. I'll take a POI whatever because it's close to 6 minutes.
Julian.
Yeah.
In the real world, Catholic schools banned Harry Potter because they thought that it was supernatural and symbolized fear and evil. Now tell everybody in the Muggle world that there is literally a class of human being who is higher than you, who has more capabilities than you, who has more choice than you in your life. How do you think the average human being is going to react to that, and who are they going to turn to?
Well, sure, I'll look to well, this was going to be my third point of substantive, but I'll deal with it now. First thing we say is that the elements which will be resentful or distrustful or will try to marginalise wizards will be marginal. Because they're grateful for us fucking curing malaria. They're great for us that we've brought everyone out of poverty, that their lives have been significantly enriched. But also, they're glad that now we've validated going to a fucking Harry Potter debating tournament. Harry Potter fangirls will be over the moon. And we also say the wizards are like pretty safe. They've got fucking magic. They can wave their wands and defend themselves from whatever threat. Fourthly, we say that Muggles will be less scared once wizarding is normalised with Muggling society. The reason Lily Potter was bullied was because she was seen as a freak and it wasn't understood. But when that's normalised, instead of being seen as just like a freak, it'll be like, your child is gifted, this is a phenomenon which occurs, this is okay. Final thing we'd say, if it turns out to be really bad, we can cast memory charms. So our model is to just sort of test if it works. Liz is going to expand on this in her speech, but we think there's a valuable cultural exchange which can take place between wizards and Muggles. When you can look at both sides of society and learn the benefits of the different kinds of development that they've had. We think the Ministry of Magic is overbearing, it employs pretty much everyone, it's a judge, jury, and executioner, and when they can discuss like different ideas like democracy, when they can discuss the benefits of innovation and technology, and you can engage in that discussion, both societies are able to take the benefits of their own unique cultural developments. Ladies and gentlemen, if it doesn't pan out, we'll just memory charm them. We propose.
So Speaker, imagine a world where you meet someone new for the first time, say in a pub, chatting up this really sexy girl. But guess what happens? Turns out she's a witch. She has magic powers, and what she can do, she can literally incinerate your body should you piss her off. Now, this is a very realistic situation that we will probably encounter should this model actually seem to work. Because, Mr. Speaker, here's the issue. Witches and wizards will always have an inherent power advantage over every single Muggle. You can be the strongest, fastest, most intelligent Muggle in the entire universe, and you will never have the same amount of power. Even if you have like freaking sub-nuclear weapons at your disposal on your person at all times, you will never have enough power to rival that of a witch or wizard who has infinitely more power reserves than you do. Who can cast spells that can cause your entire memory to be lost. Who can cause spells for you to break out of the most heinous highs, never recover from. Who can cause all of your bones in your body to literally go out of there so you're nothing but a big flopping pile of jelly. That is the kind of power advantage, Mr. Speaker, that every single wizard has over every single Muggle. And we think that when you integrate both societies, you're going to have the worst outcome for both sides possible. I'm going to show you how in my speech today. So what I'm going to do first is rebut a bit of their model and then integrate their substantive and my substantive together in one big mush, which is what Julie wants to do. So, model. One of the things we found really important in their model, Mr. Speaker, was they had an opt-in feature. Where apparently, like, if you just didn't want to opt into the Muggle world, you didn't have to. First of all, Mr. Speaker, this is kind of what happens anyways. Most people just realize that, you know, probably the best idea for all of us to go to the Pacific, like, Muggle world and basically become their either service slaves or benevolent overlords, like get to more later on, and then opt out of engaging in the Muggle world on a regular basis. Those who want to choose to do so, and they have their own voice like that. So I really don't see how that's necessarily extremely different to the status quo. If you make that further, it'd be really great. But even if it was somehow different, we still think that this kind of opt-in thing would actually exacerbate the kind of echo chamber communities that you'd be getting under their model, in both the visiting and Muggle worlds. And they give us more of my substance. This is really, really bad. Then they also told us to say that most of the space pretty much like, you know, benefits to Muggles and wizards. And he said, you know, well, Muggles have the most fantastic life possible. You know, we can just have something accio to you, or flying around, etc., etc. And Speaker, first of all, this relies on having witches and wizards at your every disposal and every call. I don't wake up in the morning with witch or wizard wizard right on my side to like literally activate my keys here. Or maybe like, you know, activating some water for me in the morning, or like, you know, meet up my child because the water went cold. We don't have people that do that in our houses all the time. We don't have enough people that's being placed in every single little house. Let's be enslaved, which is kind of impossible anyway. So then what will really from work in the terms of providing all these services to them. But even if it does, and I'm also integrating with my substantive over here, even if it does, what we actually see, Mr. Speaker, is that there's a strong power, there's a very dangerous power dynamic between Muggles and wizards. I flagged this earlier, and there's always going to be an undercurrent of knowing that you are always at a disadvantage, you are always inferior in every single way possible in power dynamics to a witch or wizard. This is really, really important to speak, because even though you may be moral equals, you can't possibly have ordinary, everyday interactions with someone knowing that they could literally blow your head off if they wanted to. Or they could like cause your memory to be lost.
On my day history.
Or they could ruin your life if should you cross their path. We think that even if you have friends who are wizards and witches, even if you like you hang out at witch and wizard bars, or you go to pumpkin beer or whatever, the problem is that you're always going to know that they have that power advantage over you. It is impossible to have an ordinary interaction with somebody who has an extreme amount of power over you. It's kind of like saying, you know, the clerk in level 1, 2 can totally hang out with the Premier of New South Wales, their best buds. It's not really going to happen because you know that that person has an extreme power advantage over you. It's actually exacerbated over the wizard sense because the wizards, as I said before repeatedly, can kill you if they choose to, or at least make your life really miserable.
And
even if they wanted, even if it wasn't about, you know, making your life miserable or whatever, even if they were really, really fantastic people, like, sure, I will totally make you gorgeous using my magic because I'm your friend and that's fantastic. You still know that forever and ever and ever, every single thing that's positive in your life is now going to be indebted to this witch or wizard who has so much control over every single little thing that could possibly happen to you. And you live the rest of your life in that sort of gratitude, in that knowledge that every single thing that happened to you that was positive from the moment that witch was revealed themselves is because of them and you have nothing to do with that. It's a very, very misconception to live with. But now, Mr. Speaker, they talk a lot about, you know, well, let's work out, let's have memory charms. Let's pretend that we're going to be reasonable and actually not have memory charms. That's stupid and throwing the motion. Let's look at what this kind of world would actually look like. Mr. Speaker, we think we're very against that.
People who take Muggle studies at Hogwarts are seen as boring losers because the Muggle world is of minimal political relevance because wizarding society can exist separately. Wizards are more likely to engage with democratic ideals and advocate for a better wizarding society when they
make Muggle studies compulsory. Upgrade the portfolios of Muggle history, Muggle religion. It's really not an issue. If you want people to take Muggle seriously, do that sort of stuff. It's really not a problem. We don't need to integrate people and make everyone rise. Moving on to my second point about malevolent dictatorships. We think this is the most likely outcome to happen should you start integrating Muggle wizard laws. What happens to speakers is the backlash from the Muggle hard right. When you have wizards and wizards, well, literally taking over the world and providing every single service. Because what does it do? It sends a message constantly, every single day, every single interaction, which is anything which Muggles can't do, that you Muggles are inferior to us wizards. Even if they treat you really, really nicely, all that's going to happen is acknowledge that you are always going to be inferior. And this causes people in the hard-right Muggle world especially to form voice communities and to backlash using through rhetoric or through guerrilla terrorist activities. What does this result in? Backlash from the hard-right of the wizarding community. And what we have are actually clashes happening between these two extreme groups. They take control of their own communities because when there's fear with people sort of environment, people buying fear-mongering more and more and more. And you get more and more clashes. It's really dangerous. What happens is, the wizards are most likely to win in this sort of war and form the malevolent dictatorships was mostly backed by pure blood dark wizards who had the most social capital. And that's a really terrible situation because now Muggles are basically enslaved and that's horrible. I don't know why they want that. But even if in some conception we don't have malevolent dictatorships, even if we have some sort of like, you know, benevolent dictatorship happening or whatever, we still get cultish insular communities that are happening in both sides of the world. We still have religious hard-right fanatics in the Muggle world, for example, causing guerrilla terrorist activities. We have hard-right and Death Eater fanatics in the wizarding world causing terrorist activities in Muggles. And we still have these undercurrents of terrorist activity happening up there. But okay, even if you take the best possible version of what they've got, it's my third point now, of the most positive utopia we can possibly imagine, and taking them at their very best we could possibly do, we still have an inherently unequal society. I've flagged several times, there's always going to be a power advantage for wizards. And there's always going to be that because Muggles spend their entire life now knowing that their birth lottery is determined every single thing about their life. Because they weren't born with powers, because there were some other Muggle borns around them who haven't been born with powers, and still those who have born with powers, they would never achieve any sort of same status that a wizard possibly did. They will always have less social mobility, they will always have fewer secure sense of worth and self. And for all those reasons, we're very happy to oppose.
It was really interesting to hear Nandini say that there will be a takeover. When last time I checked, we are the Wizarding World as the actor in this debate, and our model is that we won't stage a takeover. And moreover, the majority of wizards are mostly benevolent towards the Muggle race, and for the minority that are like dark wizards that hate Muggles, that part is a minority that we don't think are going to have the power in this debate. So, 2 questions. Firstly, what are the effects going to be of revealing, what are the possible negative effects that will be of revealing magic to the Muggles? And secondly, how will it impact Muggle relations? We've been reading substantive about how the cultural exchange between these 2 races will mean that people that are caught in between those 2 worlds, such as Muggle-borns or people that love Muggles, won't be perceived as culturally stigmatized anymore. So, firstly, we heard about the apparent malevolent dictatorship that would somewhat occur the moment that this was revealed. Okay, at worst case scenario, right? Say if that were ever to actually occur, we think that the first thing is that we think that the grateful type of sentiment that would be evoked by the fact that we've cured things like malaria, given them benefits that Muggles aren't able to ever achieve on their own, are the types of things that Muggles are more likely to focus on. And we think that that is the main thing, that even if it is a dictatorship, at least this somehow enslaved class with a better quality of life than they would under their own side. They don't have solutions to those problems, and we can provide that for them. But secondly, we think that we don't think that the wizarding world should just be confined to always being in the type of system it currently is. We think that the point of revealing them to Muggle systems such as of democracy and having a discussion about what types of policies will ensue, mean that you do give the wizarding world a chance to actually improve their own system and have a democratic contribution of how they deal with Muggles, of how they cover up any type of dark magic that happens to be exposed to Muggles. We think that right now, the very arbitrary type of exchange between one Minister of Magic and the Prime Minister of Muggles, that's the only type of exchange that happens between 2 people when entire worlds have to deal with the consequences of that. So, secondly, then talking about, the second thing she said was talking about how, people, when they reveal that they're a witch and things like that, suddenly will feel really weird about the fact that they could potentially kill them and do all these other weird shit to them. First, we would say that, that's already happening anyway, right? That is basically the world that we're living in. The difference is that now at least you have the knowledge of what potential risk could be to you. We think that, right now, what happens under their conception of the world is that you don't know whether you're dealing with, a wizard of huge power or a lot of power and what they can potentially do to you, right? For example, Tom Riddle's own mother, managed to bewitch his father, and then, all of a sudden, that mother was taken advantage of and never given any answers for why those things happened to him. We think that sort of cover-up process of memory charming somebody else does not give them the fair, understanding of what happened to them in the first place. So, then the next thing, just dealing with that, was she was talking about the power advantage and how that's something that is inherently going to be offensive to the Muggle race. Let's be honest, that power advantage already exists in that, just being inherently, that those wizards already have magic that Muggles do not. The difference is though, a lack of knowledge about that power advantage means that those Muggles are being exploited without their own knowledge. The fact that Muggles don't know that wizards exist means that the wizarding world can actually memory charm them whenever they want into thinking that wizards don't exist. So they don't have the same incentive to take accountability for their actions when they can just pretend as if that they never happened in the first place. We think under their side that power advantage still exists, but the only thing is there's more exploitation without Muggles being given the knowledge to combat that. All of Julian's material, when he talked about how Muggles are not able to defend themselves against types of charms that could be cast against them, or just having the basic facts of what type of wizarding world they're dealing with, is a really valuable thing in being able to understand and grapple with the types of events that are happening in their world. In the last 2 books, the best explanation anyone could give Muggles of why a bridge suddenly collapsed, why a cyclone happened, and why a whole lot of people were killed was that they happened to be accidental phenomenon of the Muggle world. We think that they deserve more than that, when their people's lives at stake, but moreover, the society is constantly being shaped by another world they have no knowledge of in the first place. We don't think that's a great thing. So, on to the second question of how will this impact Muggle relations, Muggle and wizard relations.
Before you do that.
So yeah.
Okay. Asians are driving a lot of social change, especially in medicines and R&D. Yet there is still much racism against Asians. Why is this the case?
Racism,
racists.
whatever, right? We just think that well, not whatever, not to racism, but in the context of this debate, God, I'm Asian, so why would I say whatever to that? We think that in terms of okay, so to the extent that some resentment will exist, best case scenario for them, sure, there is some resentment towards wizards, right? That has to be compared to the material benefits that we would actually bring to them in terms of practically how Muggles be able to solve poverty, be able to subcontract aurors to defend them if they so want to against any potential wizarding curses there. That has to be compared to the practical benefits rather than just some offensive sentiment towards them. But secondly, we'll say that that is not a homogenous type of reaction that all Muggles would have. There'll be some that are grateful and some that are resentful. But on the whole, we think that Muggles are more likely to pay attention to the derive gratefulness from that. So the last thing that we were talking about was like indebtedness. I'll do that in my substantive now. So, talking about, we think that there are people in this debate that do not fit in those two worlds and have to choose one and prioritize one form of their identity over another, either as a Muggle or as a wizard if you're Muggle-born, and choose to segregate yourself from that world without any chance to be able to move in between those two worlds. So what am I talking about? Firstly, I'm talking about like people who are Muggle-born, who by the lottery of birth are born into a family that are Muggles and are not of pure blood. Suddenly it is unjustly unfair that those people have to leave their Muggle parents behind and usually leave that Muggle world behind when they happen to marry a wizard and fully immerse themselves in that world. We think they have to give up any form of like a normal family life. We can actually talk to your parents about your experiences in schooling. We think that's a really important thing for them when they're growing up. So, or for example, we give you another example of how Petunia was perceiving her sister Lily as somewhat of an alien freak. Remember, she entered another world because she had different characteristics to her and didn't understand that. So, how do we change this? We think that firstly, when you actually go off to Hogwarts as a Muggle-born under our conception, it's not like you're choosing to fully segregate yourself from that, because the moment that under their world, when you actually go off to Hogwarts for a few years for schooling, you can only tell your parents or your family like the very bare details of what you're doing. They just know you're going to some other school to foster your skills that are like not of an ordinary experience. So if you're afraid of breaking the law of revealing the wizarding existence, you can't tell your family all those things that you want to empathize with them. But also, secondly, given that the Muggle race doesn't have any knowledge whatsoever that the wizarding race exists right now, there is no way for them to even relate to how their children experience things. Under our world, when we give them the basic facts, they are able to actually have a type of normal, somewhat relationship where they can empathize with their kids and be able to have that. So, but secondly, we'll say that what happens when you leave Hogwarts and you continue to be a Muggle-born wizard? If you happen to marry a wizard or remain in that magical community, you're not able to go back and revisit your Muggle community and spend the amount of time that you want there for fear of being discovered. We think that allowing these worlds to coexist means you can move between them rather than remaining separate worlds. We don't think that Muggle-borns or people that are labelled as blood traders need to choose between their identities and prioritize being supporting a Muggle world or a wizarding world. We think they can have both of them and equally be someone that is respected, be able to form their identity. We're proud to oppose.
Stephen, Julian got up at the start of this event and wanted to conceptualise this weirdly utopian conception of what it was like to live in the Muggle world. What we see actually is that there's still much hatred, much racism, much discrimination in the Muggle world. I, as an Asian man, feel oppressed often in that I'm conceptualised as being like Psy or being that dude from the community. We also have to absolutely hate gays, wants to deny rights to people who they perceive as different, as counter to the works of God. We see, even we have these douchebags who continually discriminate against me by claiming that I hate disabled people, and I hate Stephen. The reactions from these kinds of people against the wizarding world will not be great. Right? They'll see them as different, as people who are against the work of God, who are not the same as us. That will lead to empowering the right, to fear-mongering, towards negative reactions. That will spark the first light in the fire of the destruction between wizard and Muggle relations. That's what we see happening on this side of the house. We want to just reiterate, we're happy to push for reforms to how wizards interact with Muggles. We're happy to make Muggle studies compulsory, reform the Ministry of Magic's Muggle department to make more inclusion and understanding. We just don't think that this will work because it will lead to antagonism between two groups. Why? Well, first issue in this debate. What are the benefits to Muggles here? How are they affected? They wanted to say that we will magically revolutionize Muggle lives because wizard technologies are so great and Muggles will never have to work in the lives again. We say that we can get this through organic change too. In the last couple of decades, poverty across the world has halved. Analysts predict that it will be non-existent in another couple of decades. We say that Muggles are progressing technologically at a disproportionate rate, that they're having great increases in their quality of life. We think that they're even having invisibility cloaks, right? That's been developed by the Japanese military. We think that all these benefits that wizards can bring Muggles and have as well. They want to say that they'll get more defense. By framing around you will be able to know when a wizard's going to come up to you. Right, that seems to be the extent of it. First of all, we say, whoop-de-doo, you know this. But secondly, we think that actually decreases your defense, right? It means that you'll feel more insecure in living in your life. You'll be constantly at fear that there's a wizard around the corner who could get you, that there's going to be a Dementor or some kind of magical entity that you can't perceive. We think that that's something that's going to massively depreciate your quality of life, that's going to make you feel massively insecure, that's a massive harm on their side. But also, in terms of benefits and harms, right? They want to say that you defend the Muggle world. We say you exacerbate the antagonism towards Muggle world from dark wizards, right? You show dark wizards that, like, Muggles are different, that they can't react well to Muggles. I'm going to explain this later in my substantive material at the end of the speech. They want to say stuff about ghost science. We're not having this debate again. Like, we just basically say it's actually bad for Muggles too because Muggles can't access being ghosts. That actually detriments Muggle quality of life even further as well because they have the more limited choice now. That's a massive harm as well. Like, shut up. They want to say also this improves Muggle knowledge, right? That they're like, you learn more about your natural phenomena and stuff. We ask first of all, why is this an inherent good? We don't like necessarily believe that truth is always the best thing. We think that sometimes knowing that, like, your husband and your wife cheated on you like 50 years in a row is not necessarily going to be in your best self-interest. But then we say that we get more knowledge of outside from our world too, right? Why is this the case? Because our model, their model stunts R&D, it stunts innovation, it stunts economic development in the Muggle world. Because suddenly wizards can outcompete Muggles in every single enterprise in the known space, right? There's no incentive anymore to develop technology any further. There's no incentive anymore to innovate in terms of things such as the internet, in terms of discovering new things, in terms of science and stuff as well. Because wizards now control all the economic capital because they are at an inherent power advantage, and also because they are crowding out the market with their own, not super competitive goods. Second, yeah, sure.
Technology and development is largely static in the wizarding world. The government employs everyone and there's no innovation, they don't use technology.
Yeah.
Muggles will be able to provide unique contributions by providing technology which...
Okay, so why do you think that it's so static in the wizarding world? It's because they feel really comfortable with what they have, right? Because they can also, because they feel like they can just magic out anything. We think that that's the kind of narrative that stunts innovation and development that's going to lead to harms to the human world. Muggle-wizard relations. They wouldn't say it would get massive integration because the Muggle world would be like, oh my god, you can magic out wine. Come at me, Jesus 2.0. We say that this is unlikely to happen, right? Because as we explained, there are still people who are superstitious, who are religious, who are racist. People like to, who are scared of the other, right? That's why we see, as Nandini pointed out, that they dismiss. There are still mass pressures against countries such as Asia, Asian countries, not Asian countries, like places that are driving the development of human progress, because we see them as people who are other than ourselves. We think that there's a much bigger difference as well in terms of how they're going to perceive a race of people who literally can achieve things that we can never achieve, who can light fire with their hands, we can never do that. That's going to instead drive fear, right? That's going to drive fear-mongering amongst the right wing in particular, who already have superstitious beliefs against this kind of thing. But also, we think what's likely to happen as well, right, is it's going to stir shit in the Muggle world. You're going to get sensationalist media tabloids coming out and asking questions, right? Big headlines that grab attention. Things like, what is the wizarding world a menace or a beauty? Is it a blessing or a curse? We're going to see a polarization of this course. We're going to see things such as wizards are stealing all our jobs, are stealing people see the right wing being empowered. And what does that mean? First of all, it means the right wing getting empowered in the Muggle world, right? We see more prejudice, more empowerment of people who are prejudiced. But in the wizarding world too, how are they going to react? We're going to see that they're going to, first of all, it's proper to establish the wizarding world buys up tabloids instantly, right? They read Rita Skeeter and think it's the words of God. They're going to see this and think it's exemplary of Muggle attitudes. They have no critical thinking skills because they don't learn English and history very well in high school. That's going to mean that they're going to feel antagonized too. They're going to see this rhetoric, especially given that they already fear Muggles to some extent themselves. They're going to feel like Muggles are people who are out to get them too, that they don't feel welcomed by Muggles, that Muggles are people who they can never reconcile with. That's going to empower the far right, the people who believe in blood purity in the wizarding world too. It's going to see a resurgence in dark wizards who have whole prejudices. It's going to see people, especially at a point when Voldemort's recently been discredited, we think it's going to re-legitimize that kind of claim that dark wizards have. They want to say that, oh, if this doesn't go well, we can memory charm out of it, right? We think that that does even more damage, because now it's like the wizards admitting that they can't actually integrate with the Muggle world at all. It's like symbolically sealing a stab on the Muggle world, saying that it's nothing, it's something to never be entered again. We think that's going to drive that kind of anti-Muggle sentiment, and therefore it's going to lead to resurgence of dark wizardry, it's going to lead to harms and prejudice against Muggles. Finally, at their best case, right? We think their model is principally unjust because it reinforces the birth lottery. It tells Muggle, it undermines Muggle choice because your achievements, your happiness is always coloured by the fact that you can never achieve what great wizards can. That's going to devalue your quality of life and the quality of your achievements because you can never be as great as the wizards were around you. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, this model harmed Muggles. It hurt the wizards. It made everyone feel really, really bad about themselves. We were never proud of it to a purpose.
Are still living better than the millions and millions of people living in poverty in the status quo. The disutility of some wizards who might feel a little bit awkward having to explain their powers at the pub is vastly outweighed by the 3 billion people we have rescued from, among other things, world hunger and malaria. And if they hate it so much, if it all goes to shit, we can memory charm them and give their malaria back. Mr. Speaker, this topic was solved by the fucking Konami code of debating. But I still have 6 minutes, so I've got 2 issues anyway. The first one is how this will benefit individuals in both worlds, and the second is how this will produce a more harmonious wizarding society. On the benefits to individuals.
Sir.
No, thank you. Leaving aside this revelation will rock my little sister's world forever, we gave you substantial analysis of why this would benefit individuals in this society. Now, Dini wanted to tell you that witches are sometimes scary when you meet them in the pub. That sometimes you're afraid of the unknown and what it can do to you. First, have you met any of my previous girlfriends? Second, you're better able to defend yourself against that unknown when you know about it. So in that pub example, right, that is literally what happened to Tom Riddle's dad with Moreau Gaunt, like, drugging him and then raping him. We are better able to protect Muggles against the magical world where A, the Muggle knows that some deep wrong has been done to them, and B, there is a justice system which is not hoodwinked by memory charms of wizards, and a wizarding justice system that seems to, like, ignore everything except when it's politically convenient to behave otherwise. So the fact is, the power advantages that Nadine wanted to talk about already existed in our society. They existed through things like money, they existed through things like IQ differences. That's why when Nadine's very own example of that power imbalance, that the Premier of New South Wales and a clerk probably don't hang out, exists in our world and is like bearable by that world, that point fell. These guys then wanted to say, oh, but the thing is, we'll empower the far right. We'll create an oppressive society against wizards. This ignored a couple of things that we brought you in our first speech. First, when people realise that wizards are a thing, that individual child who happens to magic away the glass from the snake's casing is no longer a freak. That child will be accepted. Or if that child isn't accepted by that family, that child can have a place in the rest of the world which fucking loves magic because it cured fucking malaria. Like, second, everyone will be really, really grateful about the fact that this has happened. And third, even if it is a slightly oppressive society, like, even if the rest of the pub decides that they're not such a big fan of that witch, she can either hide or defend herself with the, like, fireballs that she can use to destroy that dude's head, apparently in Dean's world. We told you about benefits to individuals that were never really addressed by the other side when they grew up. We told you about how Muggleborns can finally have a decent conversation with their family about the realities of magic and can bridge this divide between the two worlds and not be bullied as a freak when they're a small child. We told you that people who pay attention in the now compulsory Muggle studies won't be freaks like Arthur Weasley. They'll be people engaging with the forefront of this new economy, with the innovation that the Muggle world can bring to the Wizarding world, as well as that we can bring to them. Finally, I can marry that really cute chick who can blow up people's heads that I met in the pub. The benefits to individuals from our case are substantial, but I'll take a POI anyway.
We already told us that we already have power dynamics in our current world as it is, but we know, and I've told you this about 1,000 times, that magical power advantage is above and beyond anything we see today. Why do you want to entrench this power advantage and make people's life more need help?
Well, first, if the magical power advantage is that great already, it is surely greater by virtue of the fact that no one else in the world knows about it or is able to take any defensive steps against it. Like, second, to the extent that you are really, really scared of that magical power advantage, like you are less scared when there is a justice system that can hold that person to account. My second issue in this debate is how this will affect societies more broadly. We told you all about this. These guys wanted to talk to you about malevolent dictatorships. It was unclear whether that would be a Muggle takeover of the Wizarding world or a Wizarding takeover of the Muggle world. So I'll deal with both. On the idea of the Muggle takeover, like the Wizarding world has magical defenses, we can deal with this shit. On the idea of a Wizarding takeover, we gave you a number of reasons why Wizarding culture would be different as a result of this cultural exchange and people actually engaging with each other on this level. First, like wizards might start to appreciate democracy, this thing in the Muggle world. And I wouldn't have to go through another one of these tournaments, like modelling in a functioning justice system every time we have a criminal justice round. Second, like when this cultural interchange exists, when people are living in harmony and Muggles and wizards are living on the same streets, like dark wizards are less likely to see Muggles as the enemy because it's harder and harder to hate that guy who like your kids go to school with sometimes. It's harder and harder to hate that guy you see in the shop when you're buying food every week. On the idea that this would antagonize dark wizards, no thank you. We have, further on this idea of antagonizing dark wizards, Mr. Speaker. We heard that dark wizards, no thank you, were going to be empowered in this society. The dark wizards would manipulate the lack of critical thought on the part of the other part of the wizarding world in order to more aggressively strike back at the Muggles. See, that's the thing. This survey takes place just after dark wizardry has had its name dragged through the mud by that guy, Voldemort, who we beat, and his followers, who we put in prison forever. The dark wizard hard right is not going to come to power again for the foreseeable future. No, thank you. When we create a more tolerant world through Muggle interchange, we are able to prevent that kind of far-right enterprise from coming to power again. The last thing I want to talk about for society is about economic innovation. Because these guys want to claim that, well, having magic means that there's no incentive for you to innovate, for the Muggles to innovate. Society just kind of stands still. First, if that's true, who cares that there's no incentive to innovate anymore? Like, you already have all the possible luxuries of the world open to you. Why the hell would you bother to develop new technology? We don't think that's true though. Not only because JK said so, but also because the wizarding world in many ways is a little bit shit and has a lot to learn from the Muggle world. Like the fact that like 80% of wizards are employed by the Ministry of Magic because apparently there's no functioning economy outside like state control. Like the fact that there are no elections that we know of, and also like the Minister of Magic presides over the High Court. What the fuck is with that? Mr. Speaker, our interchange would benefit both Muggles and the wizarding population. It would bring tolerance, it would bring peace, it would bring an end to world hunger. And if everything went wrong, we could just memory charm it away. We're proud.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House we believe ignorance to be bliss. But we only believe that ignorance to be blissful if neither side of that transaction ever actually has any recollection or any exposure or forced exposure interaction with the other side. We think for all their claims of memory charming the experience away, that still leaves our analysis about why the wizarding right will be polarized and will have increased fuel added to that fire which is currently dying out. We think that, including in a post-Voldemort world, exposing wizards to Muggles is the worst thing you can do for the quality of life that Muggles lead because it substantially increases the amount of fear that they perceive in every waking moment. It's also bad for the wizarding world because it fuels the very conflict which has characterized a book series. So I'm going to bring you today three questions in rebuttal. Firstly, how does the Muggle affect Muggles' quality of life? Secondly, what is the nature of the wizard-Muggle power struggle? And finally, what does the model do for engagement and the mobility of mixed identities? So firstly, on this idea of on affecting the Muggles' quality of life, they wanted to say two things. They wanted to say, firstly, wizards would cure everything, but on the other hand, that Muggles wouldn't feel patronized by the wizards who were curing everything. So we've got a few problems with that, right? Even if we agreed that wizards would cure all the Muggles' woes, insert topic 2, we think that is necessarily patronizing because it means it robs the Muggles of agency in that they're going to never perceive that they are capable of addressing poverty. They're going to perceive they were never capable of addressing malaria. Firstly, because it was cured without their doing, but secondly, because the agent of that curing was an agent they can fundamentally never identify with, and an agent which they perceive to be foreign. So this next thing they told us was that Muggles will be better off because they'll understand the threat that is posed to them by wizarding kind, but they'll be able to be protected. In the context of a post-Voldemort world, the threat that Muggles face from wizards is actually very, very low as long as these societies stay separate. At that point in time, it's not an improvement for the Muggles to be aware of the massive power that actually exists in this world that they can't control. So we think Muggles have a lot of fear. But they wanted to mitigate the fear that Muggles face by giving Muggles protective charms. Like, firstly, we all know that protective defenses aren't perfect, even for wizards who themselves have control over those charms, and for wizards who themselves are able to act in immediate situations and respond to developments as they occur. We think that when the provider of your protection as a Muggle is someone else who is necessarily quite distant from you, even if you just bought like a protective locket, that means that you're never actually able to be protected fully from any of the sort of fear that you now actually know exists. The last thing they told us was about memory charms and how Muggles would no longer be exploited / we wouldn't be able to just put memory charms on them to cure them. We think that the badness of being exploited and then having a memory charm put on you is probably a lot less than living your whole life in fear of possible exploitation, right? For all their rhetoric that they wanted to protect Muggles, they still aren't able to show that every Muggle will perceive total security, even if it actually exists. We think that's problematic. For that reason, that when Liv challenged us to make the comparison between the material improvements in Muggles' quality of life and the perception of safety, we think the perception of safety is the most important thing in this debate, because the extent to which you perceive your safety and the extent to which you have faith in your own agency determines the ability and the extent to which you actually pursue the ends that you perceive as being valuable. If Muggles believe they are constantly under threat, if Muggles believe that they are unable to achieve anything, any sort of quality of life becomes meaningful, and all they are left with is sure, a malaria-free existence and a full stomach. But we think that that benefit is still relatively short-lived, because our material about polarizing the right of the wizarding world still stands at the end of this debate. Okay, alright, I'll take a POI for this one.
People like Arthur Weasley use the similarities, which will probably be emphasised between Muggles and wizards, and innovate on that, and learning are more common on our side. But even if that weren't true, if Asians cured world hunger, there'd probably be less racism.
Okay, so... we think it's fantastic that people that like Arthur Weasley exist, but the unfortunate nature of discourse in general and the unfortunate nature of the discourse in the wizarding world is that the extreme voices get the most coverage. At that point, sure, it's great that Arthur Weasley exists and has a large benevolent family, but lots of dark wizards still exist, and their voices are only going to get louder when they have more evidence to draw on in the way that they propagate their views. In addition, this actually leads right onto this. When they told us that the Muggles would be grateful for all the things, we think that the physical reception of services never automatically equates to being grateful for the provision of that services to the provider. The Muggles that we're talking about as being the most important in this debate are Muggles who already fear the unknown. They're Muggles who quite possibly already specifically fear witchcraft. At that point, when malaria gets cured, they're going to become really, really suspicious of how the hell that happened and what sort of supernatural force was able to rise above everything they thought to be true in this world. They might be grateful for the fact that malaria was cured, but that gratefulness is always going to be subservient to the fear that the magnitude of that outcome propagates. The next thing they told us though was we as an actor won't take over because we're the ministry. It's great that the ministry won't take over, but we think that you still allow the mongering of Muggle fear and wizard fear to happen on both sides, and that leads to hostilities, even if not a government-approved takeover. The next thing they told us was that equalities already exist, and this was apparently some reason to add another equality into the mix. We think that the equalities that exist under the status quo are always going to be less than those that exist between natural power and supernatural power, right? Yeah. We think in addition, every single equality that exists under the status quo, society tries to quell. And the reason for that is that inequalities are really harmful. Firstly, because they actually stop you from achieving aims. But secondly, the mere perception that you are unequal to someone else limits your ability to lead a fulfilling life because you understand yourself to be constantly inferior. Mr. Speaker, because at the end of this debate, we were able to show that the far right of the wizarding world was going to be fueled by the exposure, and because Muggles were going to be continually suspicious of wizards, we think it is by far the best outcome that the two communities remain segregated.
In what everybody agreed was an extremely high quality debate, but which ultimately was a unanimous decision, we gave the debate to the affirmative team.